Greta Kempton is one of the most important American artists of the first half of the century. I mean, she's a woman who came from really humble beginnings, came out of Eastern Europe, and ended up painting the portrait of the President of the United States. So in a way, she really embodies the American dream.
She educates herself both from her European roots before fleeing to the United States, but also at the Art Students League in New York and the National Academy of Design in New York as well. And it's here that she probably perfects her techniques, which made her most notable and famous for her portrait painting.
She was first possessed of complete mastery of the technical aspects of her craft. She was one with her paint. She was one with her brushes. But she combined that with an ability to put herself out there amidst the wealthy and powerful and present herself in such a way that they were attracted to her and they wanted to be seen and see themselves through her eyes and her brushes and her vision.
Greta Kempton paints people, great and small, with a deep conviction that there is as much art in a portrait as in any other picture. Striving for perfect likeness with a blithe disregard for modernistic effects, she works also to portray character and personality without neglecting the balance, composition, and effective use of material which distinguish any other fine painting. Her portraits are strong and positive, never vague. She uses choice of pose as well as brush to reveal her study of a subject's entire being, but with frank emphasis on the best she finds in personality as well as in facial contours. She believes that a relative should recognize a portrait, that a stranger should be able to read a subject's character almost as well in a painting as by looking at the person. Her many successes bolster her theories.
The way Greta came to paint the portrait of the president is pretty interesting. She had painted the portrait of Drucy Snyder, who is the daughter of the Secretary of the Treasury, John Snyder. And John Snyder was very impressed with that portrait and suggested to President Truman that since he was looking for someone to paint the official presidential portrait, maybe he should consider this woman. And Truman said, well, why don't you let her paint your portrait first? So Greta then painted John Snyder's portrait, and I believe also his wife's portrait. And then when President Truman came to an unveiling of those at the Shoreham Hotel, he was very impressed with them and decided that, yes, this was the woman he wanted to paint his portrait. And that portrait, incidentally, ended up being used as the official campaign portrait for Truman when he ran for president in 1948, and then many years later was the portrait that the Truman stamp was based on when the post office honored Truman with a postal stamp.
Greta Kempton's paintings revealed the fact that she's looked at a lot of paintings in her life. She wanted to know everything about paintings, and she incorporated the history of paintings in her own work. In a way, this painting is the basis for everything. She's painting very classic painting method, I would say, painting in the style of Rembrandt and Rubens, working indirectly, layering the surfaces up, building the paint from very transparent and very low contrast to up to these highlights that pull the paint forward and focus our attention on this part of his face.
Greta often presented herself as really one of the best dressed women in Washington, and one might even say one of the best dressed women in New York City and in the United States. She was always well endowed in a beautiful fur coat and lovely dresses and high-heeled shoes and just made up to the hilt. And this is how a very formal lady in many of her rights, and it was said that she even painted in formal gowns out of respect for her subjects.
Not only did Greta Kempton excel in her commission portraits, but she also, you can see, put a tremendous amount of love and work into her portraits that she did just out of love of finding someone whose face she admired and wanted to capture on canvas. You can see in this portrait that it's got an almost chiaroscuro sort of lighting effect to it, like the Rembrandt paintings had, where you sort of have one light source over in the top of the frame, and it gets darker as you go down the painting, ending up with the bold in the lower part of the painting there. That's a really beautifully executed still life.
So Greta made floral paintings, many floral paintings that are just almost psychedelic in their richness and beauty. And she still incorporated the same kinds of systems of space making. And as the flowers move back into space and lose their specificity as flowers and move toward the complete falling apartness of the background there, they go through this kind of liminal area. They make a bridge between abstraction and realism in this kind of never land of space. And she does this over and over again in her florals. She seems to have great freedom and facility in her floral paintings.
As fascinating as Greta Kempton's paintings are, her personal life is even more fascinating. She always said in official biographies that she was born into wealth in Vienna. She would paint these portraits of sort of remembering being a small girl and being taken to the art academies by her nanny. But it has come to light that her background was very different than the way she portrayed it in her official biographies. She was actually an illegitimate child, probably of Jewish parentage.
Greta Kempton was perhaps the definitive example of a Jewish survivor. She moved from Austria as a woman, as a Jew, from there to Hollywood, to the legitimate and literal pinnacle of power in the Western world, the White House, as portraitist to the President of the United States.